And you've been doing that at 7 Sharp 4 years now, I think it is?
This is our sixth year. Since 2018.
Does it feel manageable, this workload of doing it?
Yeah, weirdly enough, when I first started doing it, I thought, this is going to be intense. And then I think like anything, you start doing it, and then after a while, it's like kind of a fitness. You become more fit at it, and it gets easier. Also, I reckon broadcasting has a rhythm, and I just lost my rhythm there. But broadcasting has a rhythm, and once you get the rhythm of it, and then it kind of takes on its own thing. And I think with 7 Sharp, when I first started, and I remember the first 7 Sharp that I did, I was absolutely terrified because it's live, and you come off the back of the news, and there was a lot of expectation around what it was going to be and all that sort of stuff. And there were articles in the paper, and Hilary and I were new. We didn't really know each other very well. And then you start off on that, and they cue you in your ear. I could feel my heart beating through my chest. And, with a lapel microphone that sits down on your chest, I was absolutely sure that microphone could pick up my heart beating through my chest because I was so nervous. And you're reading on auto cue, but it's live. You don't want to make a mistake. The main thing is you want to get through that first show and just not make a mistake. So that's quite freaky.
Is the nerves about the ad-libbing parts, or is it the auto cue, or is it just the whole experience?
The nerves is just the idea that a lot of people are watching, and I think you put the nerves on yourself because you just have a level of expectation. You want to do well. You want to not make mistakes. It's really about not making mistakes, I think, because the ad-libbing part of it is like that's just talking. That's fine. But when it comes to reading an auto cue, that was not something that I'd never really read an auto cue before, so that was quite a new area for me. I'd done it a little bit on Eddie Media Lunch, was reading an auto cue in the studio, but we'd do, I don't know, 12 episodes, 10 episodes a year of that, and so I'd only read the auto cue 10 times a year for like 2 hours, on a Sunday or something. So it is definitely a craft. Reading an auto cue and a lot of people go, reading an auto cue, it's actually harder than what people think, I think. And it takes time. And when you're learning live in front of 500,000 people, it's quite a brutal place to learn. And that's the thing, is that there was no rehearsal for 7 Sharp. It's not like we quickly went over what we were going to do. You don't rehearse in using current affairs at TVNZ. You just do. And you do it live. And also, but I was lucky because I was sitting beside Hilary, and she is like the best, I think, the best presenter in New Zealand. And so I was lucky that she gave me incredible confidence that she was just sitting there. And I kind of just watched her. And over the years, I've just watched the way that she does things. And she's a particularly good reader. And also, she can go, and this is the rare thing in New Zealand, when you go auto cue and you can ad-lib, and you would never know whether someone's reading auto cue or they're ad-libbing. Now, that's a great skill. Yeah. That's actually quite hard because the two parts of your brain are completely different. You're reading words and you have to read them accurately, or you are thinking creatively out of your own brain. Totally different. Mm-hmm. So you're going between two brains, which is challenging.
Tell me, is the 7 Sharp set like right next to the news set? So do they just literally spin the cameras around?
Yes, it was. In those days it was.
Right.
Now it's in a different place.
Okay.
Now it's moved down to Studio 1A, which is actually the first ever Havoc studio that we had in MTV. It's the same studio. We're facing the same way.
Still a soda stream in the corner?
You know what? It probably is. It's probably in the room next door. I wouldn't be surprised because there's next door they do all the Foley for Shortland Street and they do, which Foley's like all the sound effects that they put in afterwards. And there's a whole lot of stuff in there that's like, this is very familiar to me, all this stuff from 25 years ago. But yeah, it's quite weird. So we're now in the same studio. Wow. Obviously a different set, but yeah, we moved at certain times. We moved because of COVID originally, because we couldn't have Simon and Wendy and Hilary and I in the same bubble. We couldn't do that because if they lost presenters at that time, there was nobody else to cover, and it was quite problematic. So that things went weird during COVID, and then we ended up upstairs, and we didn't have a set, and now we've got a new set, which is somewhere slightly different. But in those days, it was opposite each other, yeah.
We kind of glossed over the number you said before. It's like 500,000. I think I had a figure of 471,000 New Zealanders every night tuning in to 7 Sharp, roughly. When you first took the job, I'm interested in that process of how you got the job, and did you audition, did you screen test, but also like thinking about that many people watching you. Is that different to breakfast radio?
Yeah, I don't tend to think much about the audience. I think that first time I definitely was thinking about the amount of people watching, and over time you forget, and then you're just in a set with someone, or you're in a studio with your friends. You know, that's kind of how it is. You don't think about it so much. I think if you generally think about 470,000 people and them watching, it can be quite confusing, because the other thing is 470,000 people. If you saw them in a stadium or something, that would be a lot of people.
It would be a lot of people.
And all those people have lives. All those people have their own things that they're into. They have cares, and they have worries, and they have loves, and they have torment, and they have all sorts of stuff, tastes. And if you start to try and think, oh, how do I make these people happy? You know, 470,000? You can't. It's such a hard thing to get your head around. So I think I try not to think about any of that, and I never kind of have. I think the main thing is, if you're with someone, I'm sitting beside Hilary, she's a friend of mine, I'm thinking if you make Hilary laugh, then generally that will, you'd hope, be entertaining for some of the people who are watching. If the majority of people are okay, if they don't hate you, then you're okay. Yeah. And radio's different. I think radio is a different thing than TV. The two mediums are so far apart. The skills that you use, the type of part of your brain that you go to, the rhythm of it, all of those things are so different. The idea that you could be on radio and then just go and be on TV, I don't know. That to me, they're different things.
Back to getting the gig, 7 Sharp. Does someone call your agent or say, hey, we want Jerry to come in and do a reading for 7 Sharp, or how does that actually come about?
Well, it was just before. No, when was it? I think it was before. Oh, now I can't really remember exactly how it came about. I remember John Gillespie, who is the head of News and Current Affairs, called me up and said, do you want to have a chat? And this must have been just before Christmas, I think, in 2017. And I said, yeah. And so we had to go to a secret location away from TVNZ. And he said, you may know, but Mike and Tony, who did 7 Sharp, are leaving. And Hilary's going to be doing 7 Sharp. And we were wondering if you'd be interested in doing 7 Sharp. Is it something that you'd be interested in? And I said, yeah, that's something that I'm interested in. And then he said, okay, cool. Well, we'll keep in touch. And then we finished that conversation. And then it must have been a week or so later or something like that. And then he came back and said, can we sit down and talk about doing this more seriously? I said, sure. And then it sort of started like that. But I don't have an agent, so I just sort of chatted to him myself.
At the time, you were very well known for your incredible Mike Hosking impersonation, which was so dialed in and so accurate, you almost couldn't tell them apart. When you're in that meeting and they've called you in and they're saying, oh, do you want to replace Mike? Is there a moment where you're thinking, hang on, this is a bit odd?
Oh, 100%. I thought, strangest thing in the world. And look, it was, at the time, I think probably to a lot of people, they'd be like, why the hell would you want that guy hosting the show? I mean, I remember accidentally reading a couple of things, and I was like, oh, that was definitely the sentiment, and I understand the sentiment. I can understand where it came from. But yeah, going from doing Mike Hosking impersonations, and then later on when I got the job, driving into Mike Hosking, so I drove into his car park, so I took over his car park, I took over his computer, I took over his desk. This is the weirdest thing, I took over his locker in the TVNZ changing room, and it still had his name on it. So they hadn't printed my name at the stage. And so I had Mike Hosking's locker doing his old job, definitely not driving his car or his type of car. But inside his locker, this is quite good. Inside his locker was a Kenny Rogers album, like on vinyl,
right,
and a Bible.
Really?
With the two things that he had left. Nothing else. Everything else had been cleaned out. No clothes, nothing else. But that was a Kenny Rogers album. Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I don't
the
even
Bible.
know. Is
And
that
the
on
Bible was
brand? I
gifted
don't know
to
if
him.
that's on brand.
I know, well, that's maybe why he left it. He
Did you-
didn't want it.
On the way up, did you harbour ambitions of kind of doing genuine kind of current affairs and news? Because we'll touch on it, but the eating media lunch persona lent into that, and then you were doing it.
Yeah. I mean, we'd have to call 7 Sharp genuine current affairs and news, which I wouldn't call it firstly. It's more light infotainment, 7 Sharp. But no, I didn't like. You know what? I've never thought that I was going to be anything, and I've never been ambitious, and I've never had ideas that this is something that I want to do, or if I do this and this and this, it's going to lead to this, or anything like that. I've just kind of never been like that. The first job that I ever did in TV on the Havoc show, I didn't know that was going to happen. All of a sudden, that just sort of happened, and I was in that position, and then as a result, something else led on to something else, and I found myself in that position, and then it's been a just making decisions of yes or no when you get offered things over the years, and then you end up at the place that you end up. But I've never been very calculated in that way, and maybe that's just how I am, or maybe I'm just too stupid to be calculated. I'm not sure, but I've just kind of ended up at this point. It's quite accidental.
One of the most fascinating parts for me of your success is how you are the same person, but you're nailing both audiences. Because the audience, the chat you have with Matt in the morning on Radio Hodaki is very different to the persona you put forward for 7 Sharp. But it's the still base Jeremy, and you just kind of tailor it, right? Like, what's breakfast radio? What's the difference for you?
Well, breakfast radio is a lot of stories about you've got to bring a lot of your own life, and you've got to bring bits of yourself, because essentially nobody can see anything. So all they're hearing is what's coming out of your brain. So it's brain to mouth to microphone to ear, wherever someone's listening, which is quite a pure kind of a process. So you are creating everything that comes out of your brain and someone else's brain, and whatever is created from you too goes into people's ears. Television is about pictures. It's not about words. The words accompany the pictures, but it's mainly a visual thing, and you're stimulated by what you see. And it took me ages to work this out, but I mean, Country Calendar is a great example. Absolutely beautiful pictures. And what draws people to Country Calendar? You know, why is Country Calendar one of the most popular shows in New Zealand and has been for the last, 50 years? It's pictures. The pictures are just stunning. I mean, yeah, okay, the stories are interesting, but essentially it's the same rural story, isn't it? There's never like it's never like at the end of the story they say, oh, and such something terrible's happened to them. It's like always just it's a rural story of people who take on a challenge, and then they go through the tribulations of that challenge, and then they end up at the end of the challenge. I mean, they've often not succeeded hugely or failed, or it's just they've gone through it. It's mainly pictures. Yeah. And so with TV, it's weird. It's what you see. And on something like 7 Sharp, most of 7 Sharp is stories, obviously. And then Hilary and I introducing the stories, and a little bit of chemistry from Hilary and I. But I'm not revealing much of myself on that show. And so you can hide on television, whereas on radio, I don't think you can hide in the same way. Radio, you can hear so much more than what you can see in someone's personality, if you know what I mean. With the way that you respond, the time that it takes you to respond to something reveals so much more about yourself. Whereas with TV, the visual part of it really, it's almost like it's a fog over people in terms of getting right through to someone.
Yet, despite that, for people like me that do bookend their days with you, you're still able to sneak in some really nice Easter eggs into 7 Sharp. Like, yeah, I believe he does take cash. EFTPOS or cash. It was incredible last week. It really was. Is everybody in on that?
No, nobody's in on that. I mean, our executive producer would know. He knows what's going on because he listens to the radio.
Yes. And that target demo of me.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is Radio Hodaki. There's like a gag in Radio Hodaki, right? Try to slip some phrases into 7 Sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it stemmed from years ago from the Scotty J. Stevenson word sneak, where we'd give Scotty J. Stevenson on Radio Hauraki on Friday mornings a word to try and sneak into a commentary, because he was commentating rugby at the time. And that man was amazing.
Yeah, he was.
And because he would do it I'm just sort of plopping it into a place just before the last part of our show, where we come out of an ad break and there's just a gap, so we can always put in anything in there. But he was genuinely, one day we gave him number 3 bag, as a euphemism for a condom. And he got it in there by this guy, Atu Morley, scored a try. And he said, and Atu Morley, and he goes, and the number 3 bags a try, because he was a prop. And I was like, he did that on the fly. He was commentating.
yeah.
Like, it was super impressive. So anyway, it stemmed from that. And then if we thought, if we can shoehorn some words in, then, that'll make a segment.
There's one really viral clip, and I think you're talking about like extreme frisbee or something. You're like, and let's go see him toss off in the park.
Yeah.
And then Hilary's giving you the little side eye, and it's just like a little glance at Jeremy. But there's other ones where it seems she's in on it. And there was one you were talking about a cat. There's a segment about a cat, and it was like pussy problem and pussy this and pussy that. And then she's like, R.I.P. pussy, I guess. Which is
yeah. No, well, those ones are more. I think I got those. Some of them I've got in during intros and stuff, like the we sent Rhys Mathewson to toss off in the Queenstown Gardens. That one it seemed obvious, but otherwise it's quite hard often to shoehorn in bits into the intro. And the other thing is that I might write something in, and then Hilary will read it and she'll sub it, and she'll go, "Why the hell would you want to say that word in there?" And then she'll change it so it actually makes more sense, and so that will be the end of that one. It's like, well, we've just got to say it at a different time.
But you do talk about that chemistry between you and Hilary, and it's incredible watching and viewing. But as you said earlier, you guys didn't know each other really before you started the show, so that's built organically over time. Yeah,
it has, and she, I love Hilary, and she's a wonderful person to work with. I feel very lucky. Lucky to work with both the main people that I work with in my life. And you have partnerships at certain times as a broadcaster, and it's an interesting area, chemistry, partnerships, because most of the time people are thrown together and they're not often even asked whether or not they should be thrown together. In Hilary's situation, I think she was the first person that they wanted for that job, and then I think you'd have to ask her, but I'm pretty sure she then suggested some people who she wouldn't mind working with, and I think I was one of those people. I think that's the way it worked. I'm not sure exactly, but so she did have a say, and I'm always surprised when I hear about presenters who are thrust into situations with other people who they don't know, and they don't even have a say on who that's going to be. Because ultimately, as you guys know, doing a podcast, like, chemistry is pretty much everything. And what is chemistry? It's a magic. It is this magic thing that happens, and you know when it happens. And it's actually, if you're totally honest about it, it is the reason why you broadcast. The magic is what you're looking for all the time. And if you are open to the magic happening, then these moments happen, and it feels so good when it happens. And you know when it's not happening, you're quite aware of it. And I reckon you get better over time of spotting when it occurs and when it doesn't.
Yeah, I think just before we move on, I'll talk about Matt Heath in this regard, because you guys have such great chemistry. He's the perfect foil. You guys are in such a routine now. You've been doing it for so long. But is he just the best to throw something to? Because you know he's just going to pick it up and run with it.
Seriously, Steve, it's impressive that you know that. That's exactly what the kind of person that he is. I always know if I'm going to say something, he will come in with something. He has something every single time. And that is such a great gift to work with someone like that. I can't imagine now, because Matt and I have been doing this show for 10 years, I can't imagine throwing something at someone and they just come back with nothing. That's absolutely terrifying.
Well, I did with Shay before, isn't it?
I think I scrambled with
Suzanne Paul, mate.
No, you scrambled well there, Seamus. You did well. But yeah, that is a great gift to work with someone like that. And he is 100% like that, because there's a lot going on in that brain of his, like, at all times. He can look at something very quickly, and he can go down 3 angles. He's like, in his brain, each time you say something, there are 3 options for him to take. And it's interesting, you never quite know which one he's going to take. I don't know, but I know that there are always options. With some people, you might throw to, and I don't really, and haven't worked with people like this for a long time, luckily, but you would throw someone and they just look at you blankly and it's like, okay, well, I got to pick it up again and go again.
Yeah.
And that's quite a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, his appeal seems to be he's genuinely interested in everything. It just
Or got an opinion on everything, or a reference
it
to
comes
everything.
across authentic.
Yeah, well, look, and this is no secret, you know, he's super smart. His father's a professor. His mother was incredibly intelligent, and he is gifted with a large brain capable of storing huge amounts of information. He's got a lot of information in there, and he just, you know, digests podcasts and reads stuff. Like, he just loves it. And he gets in on something, and then he just goes deep. He needs to know. If he's going to be interested in something, he needs to know exactly how it started, why it's that. He's not interested in just kind of generally knowing about it. He needs to know more about it. He has to. Otherwise, he feels like he's not. Either he knows everything about it or he knows nothing about it. Yeah. That's kind of, he's pretty extreme dude.
Was that an arranged or an arranged relationship to get you onto Hauraki together?
It was actually, but it was something that so I knew him, I'd known Matt for quite a long time. I first met Matt in the 90s, late 90s, and he had come to Radio Hauraki off an amazing piece of luck. And luck, how interesting is luck? Luck is everything. I mean, it's why we are here. It's why we exist, all of us three people. And then the fact that we're now in this moment, crazy pieces of luck to lead to that moment. But luck for him was Ian Stables, and you probably heard the story.
He was my neighbour in Hamilton.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was meant to be the drive show host on Radio Hauraki, and he was all signed up, ready to go. And then he had an unfortunate altercation with someone at an airport, and never quite made it to the first show. I mean, I think this was the Sunday before the first show on the Monday. Classic Stables. And so that was the end of that. So there was a very rushed call that was put through to Matt and said, look, would you mind doing a drive show? And Matt was like, really? Okay. So he started working at Radio Hauraki. And then over time, just all of his friends started working at Radio Hauraki, and I was one of those people. I must have come maybe a year after him or so. I started doing a Saturday show with Dr. Steve Simpson of the Auckland University Physics Department. So then when Martin Devlin stopped doing the Radio Hauraki breakfast with Laura McGoldrick, they thought, oh, maybe Matt and Jeremy could do it. And so we went through strange kind of go along to a recording studio and record a couple of breaks, and we talked about it and stuff like that. And then they thought, oh yeah, this is okay. And so we started doing the breakfast show.
Amazing sliding doors moment there with Stables. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's talk about luck.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if he hadn't have done that, whatever he did at that airport, God knows what the hell that man was up to. But if he hadn't have done that, then yeah, there's no doubt we never would have done the show together.